It is a bit of a wild west, the world of comedy. My organisation is called Funny Women because I support women primarily into careers in comedy. The human animal is the only species that uses the action of laughter to communicate, apart from chimpanzees. I was really thrown by the fact that night after night, the lineup in this club was always men. Always men. Very rarely was a woman on the bill. Everything feels very accessible, but it isn't, you know? New female comedians are very proactive and they get their shit together and they do it. You've got to make a bit more effort, industry.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly the same in the world of business. We've settled for it rather than fighting it. It's the only industry I know where everyone just says what they think anyway. You've got to be bossy to get things done.
A woman to that.
Yeah, more bossy, more funny.
I'm so happy to have you here with me today. Can you please start by introducing yourself as if you're speaking to someone that you've never met before?
Okay, I'm Lynne Parker and I'm the founder and rather elaborately called Chief Executive Officer of Funny Women, which is a non-profit organisation.
And what does Funny Women mean to you?
What does it mean to me? It means 24 years of hard labour, if you want me to be honest. It's an organisation. I set it up 24 years ago. It is my life's work, actually. I think that's probably the best answer.
And for people who maybe don't consider themselves funny, what would you say are what are the criteria to be a funny woman?
First of all, everybody's funny because we all have the capacity as human beings to be funny. The human animal is one of the only species that uses the action of laughter to communicate, apart from chimpanzees and other primates. So it's very unique to us as humans. I feel like that's the cart before the horse type question, because that is kind of way down my list of priorities. My organisation is called Funny Women because I support women primarily into careers in comedy. So I help them get through the hoops of getting into the business, performing, writing. These days, creating is a big area of comedy as well. So that is my role. And as a grassroots non-profit organisation, we use our contacts and our skills through my sort of extended team to support women. And then that has then moved into the sort of business area as well. So in exactly the same way that we develop new talent through the comedy world. And the comedy world's got many different layers, but there's grassroots, which is circuit, clubs, live comedy, right through to television, film writers and creators. So it's a big industry. And a lot of people don't think about that. They just think comedians and on stages. They don't think about everything that goes behind that. And there's a lot. I've just come from a meeting with a very lovely young management person who's just set up a small division in a bigger management company. But somebody like that is the kind of person I want to support. So it's a very big extended industry, not just what you see on Live at the Apollo on television. It's beyond that. And then because I've done all of that for quite a long time, since about 2008, 2009, we started to get work in larger organisations who wanted us to come in and use our comedy skills to help specifically women with their confidence and their development. And really, I suppose the common denominator of all of this is really about giving women a voice.
Yeah.
And where else do you get cut through but on a comedy stage? Yeah. And culture very much reflects society. So, I feel very proud that one of the things that's happened alongside the development of Funny Women is we begin to see a lot more women in high profile positions. And obviously that is reflected in the world of comedy. Yeah. You're seeing a lot more women now coming through doing stand-up. A lot of quite famous women now that you would know from seeing them on TV and things that have started out in our very early days in our Funny Women Awards. So, awesome. that's a very roundabout way of explaining it, but I think we got there.
Yeah, no, the reason I asked this question is not to take away from any of these structures which we're going to unpack, but more because there are going to be different types of people listening to this conversation.
Yes, yeah.
And not every single person is going to identify as a comedian or inherently like the most funny person. And I love what you said about everyone is funny.
Yeah.
And before we kind of get into all the themes and the structures of like all the wonderful work you do, I wanted to unpack this concept of like, what does it actually mean to be a funny person?
I think, first of all, go back to what I said, everyone's funny. So we all have the capacity to be humorous or whatever. The several things. Being funny is about being in the moment and being mindful, and quite often just saying what's going on in your mind. Because obviously the first thought, the first thought in your head is the funny thought. But we are restricted, and women particularly are much more restricted in what we feel we can think and say. So we hold back. So the world of comedy very much reflected that 25 to 30 years ago. Women were not meant to be funny. It was a societal thing. It wasn't, it's not very ladylike to be funny. I expect you will remember the funny people at school were probably the naughty kids. So there's a lot of associations around funny that are negative. But conversely, we love funny people. And you think about it, all the people that are quite successful in business or politics, in the media, quite often the thing people will say about them, I like that person because they're funny. Funny makes you memorable. So it's a fantastic tool for us. I think it's just kind of got reframed. It's been framed wrongly. Whereas I think funny women, we're totally unabashed about calling ourselves funny. We're just another group like everybody else. I mean, there's so many groups of women of different things now. We have, silly women, unlikable women, likable women. Just there are so many different setups that we do, and everyone's trying to, find the next big thing. But Funny Women just was a great the original naming of it was because I was going to do a show called Funny Women. That's that, and it just stuck. And nobody had registered it as a URL, so I did, and the company name has stuck as a result of that. But yeah, it comes with its issues, obviously, because, sometimes people don't think they want to work with us because we're all women, but we're not all women. We have quite a lot of male allies. I work with a male producer. My husband's involved somewhere in the background. So, it's not exclusively for women, but it is an organisation that supports women.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing and outlining that. You mentioned a little bit about starting because you had a show that you wanted to start called Funny Women. So talk us through the backstory of why did you start and how did you start your business? Well,
the actual story of why I started it is because I've had a very, very long career before starting Funny Women. I trained as a journalist and then I went into PR and marketing. And in the last century, actually, in the 1990s, I ended up as a publicist for a comedy club in London. And I'm a big comedy fan. I sort of grew up listening to a lot of comedy on the radio. My father thought he was hilarious. I grew up in the 60s where we all went to holiday camps. And so comedy's, very much in my family DNA. Never wanted to be a comedian and still don't, but always loved comedy from a listening, watching, writing perspective. So to end up doing this job was fantastic for me, but I was really thrown by the fact that night after night, the lineup in this club was always men. Very rarely was a woman on the bill. And maybe once in every few months, there'd be a female comedian. So I questioned it and I said, why don't you book any women? And the promoter just turned around to me, a man obviously, and said, because women aren't funny and there are no funny women. And I did have one of those light bulb moments of thinking, yeah, women are really funny. And I know, where are all these women that I know from TV and what have you? Why aren't they doing these clubs? And so I slept on it and went back to them and said, look, I I think you're wrong. I think there are lots of women out there. We need to create an environment that they would want to perform in. Why don't I put on a show in your club and we just have an all-female lineup? And he said, oh, all right then, you know, what are you going to call it? And it was literally the first thing that popped in my head. I just said, oh, Funny Women. And he went, all right then. Anyway, about 2 weeks after that, we fell out. We had a big time fallout. I can't remember what it was about now. It's such a long time ago. And I got out, I left. But I did two things that are pretty smart, which... Number one, I registered the URL. I didn't even know what a URL was. We are talking about in 1998. Registered the URL, so I had the funnywomen.com and all the variants thereof, because a friend had said to me, oh, you know, the future's all going to be in the internet. You need to have a website. I didn't even know what a website was. So I did that. And obviously I registered the company. And then we took a little time to get to the next stage, because at that point in time, I was getting involved with another PR business. I'd been asked to join as a director, and I thought, well, I'd better go with that income and what have you. And we ran the first ever Funny Women event in 2002 called Funny Women, and it was a really big show in a major London theatre with the great and good of the world of comedy. I have never done that since on that scale. Made every mistake you could make on one show. And really, I suppose, having done that and got through it, it then cleared the way for me to think about where am I going to go with this next. And what happened from doing the big charity show was we got approached by a company who was one of our minor sponsors. And they said, we absolutely love what you're doing. We've heard you talking about running a competition, which I had. I felt that we needed a grassroots platform. It was all very good having all these famous women doing comedy, but what about new people? You know, it's the same in business. You need pipelines to bring new people through. And they said, well, we think it's a great idea. We'll back you. So I ended up with Babycham as my sponsor for 3 years, and they helped me launch the awards. And the other smart thing I did was I didn't call it the Babycham Awards. I called it the Funny Women Awards, because I would have been stuck, wouldn't I? Because when they moved on, I wouldn't have had them as a sponsor. So that's how it all began. In 2003, when we did the first ever awards, I think we had about 70 women enter.
Wow.
And last year, 2005, we had overall, because we now have nominations and entrants across 5 different awards, and we cap it at around 2,000.
Wow.
And they literally are from all around the world.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, the dominant is UK and Europe, but we literally have people from all around the world enter. Mm-hmm. And that has obviously increased since COVID times, because we went online. We carried on all through COVID. We did the awards online. And we do quite a lot of things online still. Mm-hmm. So it's a bit of a monster now. And it takes a lot of money and time to run it.
Wow. Well, before I start asking you about community building and what it's taken to grow an organization for the last 2 decades in that way, I want to ask if there's any young women that are, or young people in general, that want to go into comedy or are starting their career. What are different ways that they can get support from?
Just going into comedy, or just generally starting a career?
I'm making it broad because I want the audience to feel like they have different options.
Yeah. Well, anyone starting out in a career, whether it be comedy, music, banking, media, I mean, I can only give you advice based on my own experience, the young women I work with now, my own family, you know. Mm-hmm. And also the world is very different from when I started out. However, I think there's a lot of wisdom that gets forgotten along the way. And at the moment, we're facing quite a lot of unemployment in this country. And it's not easy to just go out and get a job. Mm-hmm. And my view is always get some experience. You know, I do hate to have to say go and volunteer, but actually I did a hell of a lot of volunteering when I was a young person. And they taught me some amazing life lessons. I went and worked in youth groups. I had some really awful Saturday jobs earning absolutely no money whatsoever, but all different levels of experience. And I think that you cannot sit there and think you're just going to get a job anymore, whether you've got a first class degree from Oxbridge or, no qualifications at all. I think the basics are put yourself out there. Don't just sit at home on your phone, on TikTok, looking at things. You've got to live in the real world. But that's something that's based on my generation's experience and what I see with people today. So young women starting out in comedy, the smart ones, it's a good example, I think, is they work it all out. They know what they're going to do. They learn their material and they pick up the phone or they contact the promoters and say, I'm looking for gigs. I want to come and perform at your club. It's not always that easy for women. That's why Funny Women exists. So we kind of have Facebook community and what have you to help them. But yeah, find those communities that can help you and support you, but put yourself out there. Actually, it's probably never been easier to find things to do. But for some reason, and it is only an observation, I think young people are quite risk averse about picking up the phone. Is actually still a great way to get in touch with people. We all seem to defer to WhatsApp and goodness knows what these days. I hate it when people send me messages on Instagram and I don't see them for days. I don't look at my messages there. But, if someone actually finds my phone number and texts me or messages me through perhaps a platform where I am more, look at, if you're trying to get hold of someone, look at the social media platforms where they're active and then contact them. Yeah. And find out a bit about them before you contact them. Don't just, say, hi, I'm looking for gigs or I'm looking for a job. Find out a bit about them and give them a reason as to why they should have a chat to you, actually. So going back to the comedy world, a lot of it is down to experience and just getting out there. It is more difficult for women. They are still a lot of very chauvinistic, misogynist male promoters. Well, not just male promoters generally, who will always defer to men. The other reason this is sometimes the case is because if you are a woman, a nighttime gig where you've got to get yourself to and from on public transport can be quite dangerous. There's some pretty awful evidence about women being, sexually compromised to get gigs. That happens. And if you're a mum with little ones, you're probably the one stuck at home rather than your partner or your husband. So there are a lot of things around being a woman in comedy that make it a little bit more difficult for you. But there is a trend now towards sort of daytime gigs and earlier evenings and weekends that I think are much easier. And we try to do more of those now because I think people want to feel safe. I think that's another problem at the moment. And that could be any of us, not male, female, and in between. You want to feel safe. Public transport, if you're using it. Everything feels very accessible, but it isn't, There is this perception that everything's accessible because we can get everything on our phones and what have you. But actually, to physically go from A to B can be quite an effort,
Yeah, it's not something I considered before you brought it up. But one thing I did think about was I went to a comedy club like 2 weeks ago with my mum. And it's one of the bigger ones in London. And the lineup was mostly men. There was one woman. She was great. But
they're always great, the one woman as well. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, she was great. But what I did notice is a lot of the men's jokes were kind of jokes at the expense of women in general.
Yeah.
And they were quite misogynistic. Yeah. Sexual unnecessarily. Yeah. Like they just weren't they weren't funny.
They weren't funny. They weren't crafted.
They were just absurd. They were just he just started talking about having sex with a cauliflower. It was just random, it wasn't even funny.
That's not funny.
And then there was the woman and she was great, but I felt like there's kind of almost a more limited scope of topics that women feel more comfortable exploring? Or that
it depends on where it was. I'm guessing where it was. It does have a reputation for, people come expecting to see a bevy of men, but they could do something about that. They could, it's easy to book women. There are, and particularly in the central London, there's lots of really great female comics jobbing around, who want gigs.
Yeah.
But I'll probably get into trouble for saying this, but I think a lot of people a lot of the clubs, they just get into a groove and they're quite lazy. So they'll go with what's presented to them. So if they've got an agent who's got 6 men on their books and 1 woman, they'll probably just go to that agent and book all their acts and take the 1 woman because it's easy for them. People, they don't shop around. I mean, I struggle with that as someone who is both a producer and a promoter, who's really trying to develop new talent. I get very angry that the big boys in the industry, the big bookers and the big management companies don't always do their homework. Some of them, not all of them, but there is a kind of, we just want the most famous person. And a lot of that is driven by selling tickets, because obviously the bigger the name, the easier it's going to be to sell tickets.
Yeah.
But they can easily balance that out by, I always, when we book a lineup, we always have, obviously you want someone who's going to sell tickets that people want to come and see, but then we'll throw in some new talent that they've probably never seen before, because that's a good way of supporting new talent.
Yeah.
And actually the big names like that as well, they want to support new talent coming up. So it's just a very weird thing. It's a very unusual industry. I mean, I sometimes think, does it mirror business? And yes, it does, in terms of male-female ratio and women not getting to the top. But the other thing about your gig is that is also very typical, where you have a lot of very mediocre blokes doing comedy, and then the 1 woman who's probably had to work much, much harder to get the gig will be fantastic and stand out,
Yeah, I think
it's a shame, isn't it?
But just like in business, consumers have a lot more power than they think. I think audience members have a lot more power than they think. So people who are listening, who love going to comedy clubs, who want to make it more of their routine or activities, do you have any recommendations? And I can put them in the bio if you don't have any off the top of your head, of places that you think are doing a good job in supporting diverse talent, and places where you can actually go and find.
I think on the whole, the big festivals like Brighton Fringe, Edinburgh Festival, Edinburgh Fringe. We've just finished Leicester Comedy Festival. There's a big festival in Exeter. I don't know if that's been and gone. There's one in Wales. There's one in Ireland. There are lots of amazing arts comedy focused festivals. And on the whole, they're pretty good at representation. The reason for that is the acts book their shows. So they apply to have their shows on. And women are really good at marketing themselves, and they're very proactive. So if you're a new female comedian, they're hungry to do their shows. So a lot of them will go up to Edinburgh and do their first shows there. And Edinburgh's great in that they now have a spectrum of shows. So you have the big venues, which are obviously more expensive to put your show on. But there's the free festival, and you can get much cheaper deals on venues. So you can go up there and do a show less expensively, and you can do a short run. But I've noticed that the new female comedians are very proactive, and they get their shit together and they do it. Because we're good at that, we're always good at multitasking, getting everything done. So I think that's a really good place to start if you want to look at really great, new, diverse comedy. Club-wise and venue-wise, in any major city, there are some great comedy clubs. Obviously, in London, we have everything from the Comedy Store to 100 Club, not the 100 Club, that's music. So I'm going to have to give you a list.
You can give me a list. I'll put it in the bio. In the bio, guys. Check the list.
But, Manchester, we work with the Frog and Bucket. That's a fantastic venue run by a woman, and she's really good at her booking. There's Glee Club in Cardiff and Birmingham. Brilliant. What's the lovely club in Bristol that we did some gigs with called The Gaff. They're very pro-women. I don't think anyone's anti-women. I think sometimes they just go for the easiest people to book and don't look beyond. You've got to make a bit more effort, industry.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly the same in the world of business. We've settled for it rather than fighting it. And what's happened in comedy, because the women in comedy are quite outspoken and will fight for themselves, they've cut through. They've done really rather well.
And what would you say about the side of like precarity? Because I think in creative industry, it's really hard to get good first paid jobs. And then I think like getting your first gig is a big deal. Getting your first paid gig is like a huge deal.
In a work situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what advice would you have for female comedians or comedians in general that are starting out that want to get their first like good gigs?
In most promoters and clubs and venues will have, and bookers, the protocol, which I don't 100% agree with, is you have open spots, okay? And open spots are unpaid, usually. We actually do pay a little bit, just to cover your train fare or whatever. We like to have an exchange. We like our women to feel they're valued in some way. So an open spot is your first spot. And the progression is usually you get booked for 5 minutes. And if you do well, then you might get a middle spot and get paid a bit more money. And then you progress to the sort of the opening spot, not the open spot, the first act on. Then you have middle spots, and then you have a headliner. Headliners are usually where you spend your money because they're the ones that help you sell the tickets. That's the way the industry operates. But we jiggle it around. We do gigs where we pay everyone the same because we think we don't want to differentiate between somebody who's a bit more experienced and somebody who's just come through our awards who's actually really good and every bit as good as the person who's been going for 10 years. So we've got a big event coming up where we're paying everyone the same. And I think that's a really nice thing to do. But yeah, it is a bit of a wild west, the world of comedy. It's still not very regulated. We don't have unions and things like that. We've got a new organisation that's been set up called the Live Comedy Association. And they're working really hard to try and bring some industry structure and bring things in line. But it's really tough because it's the only industry I know where everyone just says what they think anyway. It's not like any other business, and it's full of people who've got a lot to say, full of people with social, not social anxiety, but, neurodiversity is very prevalent. So people struggle sometimes to organise themselves and to be kind of good communicators. It's a very, I'm making it sound awful, but it's a beautiful industry, but it's also a very tough industry. And it's not regulated and organised in a way like any other normal business would be. And that, I have to say, that has been a struggle for me all through running Funny Women, trying to explain that to people. I mean, particularly banks. Banks just do not get what I do at all. And a lot of people think that what I do is some elaborate hobby. It's not a proper business, because to them, they just see it all as a kind of, they only see the front window, they only see the shop window side of it. They don't see all the structures and things that go on behind it. And as fast as I kind of think I found a solution for running something, I'm throwing it out and starting again. But that's the net. I suppose a lot of businesses are like that. You just have to adapt and change. But hopefully the Live Comedy Association will, I don't know how many members it's got now. It could do with a lot more members. It doesn't cost you anything to join. You just have to sign up. And they have a very good committee of people in place who are all doing their best as volunteers to bring the industry in line. Some of us have been involved with I did a round table in Westminster last year about the state of live comedy. And I was on some kind of jury, I think they called it. I can't remember. It's all very exciting. In one of the committee rooms at Westminster. And we were all asked to, that's right, we had to give evidence to 4 or 5 MPs about the world of comedy, which they just didn't understand. I mean, some of the questions were very bizarre. But at least we were sat in there as people working in the industry, explaining direct to government about some of the challenges we face.
So going back to getting jobs, like getting your first paid gigs, you explained the kind of different types of slots there are. Is there any way that people can kind of flesh out their portfolio? We were talking off camera about the importance of social media and how now promoters and bookers, they love comedians with audiences or just people
ready-made.
So do you have any advice? I know you said you don't particularly like making videos of yourself, but is there ways that you would recommend showing up and having a digital portfolio?
It's very difficult to promote yourself anyway, whether you're a comedian. But if you want to be a frontline comedian and you want to be on Live at the Apollo and the next Catherine Ryan, as someone I was talking about earlier today with my manager friend, you've got to plan it all out, and you've got that social media profile is going to get you the gigs. And people look at the numbers. So if you've got a following of, huge amount of thousands of followers on Instagram is obviously still good. Facebook Live, TikTok is huge now. I mean, you can, a lot of people start out making funny videos, putting them on their social media, and then they get picked up from there. And there are people that have literally made careers out of doing that. And selling. I know there are 2 women who've both won our Content Creator Awards. Sophie McCartney, Tired and Tested. She's had 3 or 4 successful tours. And a lot of that is off the back of being an influencer, social media content creator. And another person called Serena Terry, who does fantastically funny videos as Mammy Banter, where she plays all the characters herself, but really clever videos. And she's built up a massive following. She's in Northern Ireland. And again, she has sold 2 or 3 tours, big shows. I think Serena's first ever live stand-up show in Belfast was like 12,000 people. Wow. I mean, that is mad. Usually when you're starting out, you're lucky if you've got 12 people, never mind 12,000 people. But it does put another whole expectation on it, doesn't it, really? And putting videos out on Instagram or TikTok or whatever is a very different experience to performing to 12,000 people. She is quite unique. I mean, not many people that could do that and do it that successfully. So, they're extreme examples, but just on a general level, if you are starting and you want to be a jobbing comedian, shall we say, just doing gigs around the country or just in London or whatever, your social media profile will help, because the first thing we all do when we go to book someone is look at what they're like online. Either their videos of them performing, if we don't know what they're like, or just the numbers again. Because you think, I'll book them because they'll sell 100 tickets. So it's a shame, isn't it, really? Because you're not necessarily always booking based on content or merit or whatever. You're looking at the numbers and thinking, that'll sell me tickets. But it's business, isn't it? You've got to, if you want to make a living doing it, you've got to look at those. You've got to look at it that way. But it's become very, I think what social media has done is, I don't know how you would put it really, but it's like it's put a price on it. And so now everyone's chasing the next big content creator. They want someone who's probably already got, 1 million followers. They might not even be a comedian. They may never, like Serena, have done a live gig. But people think, I'll book them because they're going to sell tickets for me.
Is there any way that people who don't have big followings yet, but have a clean portfolio, can still show and demonstrate their work? And like, what advice do you have for them of like,
well, I'm one of those people because I run the Funny Women Awards, and they're absolutely designed for new people. It's a new talent. We're not there for people who are already established. It's for new talent coming through. And obviously we have writers. We have a Writers Award and a Content Creator Award and a Short Film Award, which is different to content creation because we give the women entering a chance to make a short funny video, which doesn't have to be on social media anywhere. It's just make a short film that is funny because it's a slightly different discipline. They don't have all the worry of whether they got following. We don't look at that. But for content creator, obviously that's a very different award. And that is where we look at that very specifically. So by separating it up, we're giving more chances to people. But there are lots of competitions. So competitions are great. They are a meritocracy because the BBC run their comedy awards. There's the, what's the other big one? There's the other big one that runs alongside Edinburgh Fringe. Competitions are really good to look at, and nearly every festival has some kind of competition as well. So that's why they're good. That's why it's good to take part in them. You get involved, find out, enter things. And don't, people say to me, oh, I thought about entering your awards, but I didn't feel ready. I said, well, if you take that attitude, you'll never be ready. Just give it a go. It's like entering business awards. If you don't enter, you never know if you're going to win anything. Sometimes it takes a few attempts to get somewhere, but you've got to try. I think competitions are a really good way of getting you in front of people. Going back to what I said earlier, picking up the phone, messaging people, do it nicely, find out a bit about the people that you're contacting, do your homework, do your research. Don't book a gig in Ormskirk if you live the other end of the country and can't get there. They're not going to book you. Be sensible about it. There are lots, certainly now more than ever, there are lots of local gigs in every town and city. And that's a great place to start, and be nice to people. Don't be aggressive, and don't be, explain to people, explain to the promoter why you need the gig, or could you have 5 minutes to try out some new material? We've gone down very comedy route here, but I suppose that's what I do. I do lots of other things, but yeah. And speak to other people in comedy. I'm just one voice, and there are lots of us. We like to help. A lot of us at Grassroots like to help.
That's wonderful. You said we're down a comedy route, and I think that's really fun. What you said at the start of everyone's funny, I agree, but I also don't agree in the sense that I wouldn't pay to watch everyone give jokes and be funny. And so for people who want to cultivate the skill of being funny and more deliberately funny and want to maybe either become a better comedian or go into it, do you have any recommendations on how they can
they want to go into comedy, or they just want to get some skills they can use, life skills?
No, aspiring comedians. Or comedians that are starting out that want to work on their craft.
Checklist is go and do a course, go and do a workshop. I run very good workshops. I run them about 3 or 4 times a year. I'm very lucky because I have a very swishy venue. I run all my workshops at the Groucho Club in London. They're only women or female identifying. And I do, twice a year, I do a longer day event. And then I do a couple of 2-hour workshops as well. And really, they're just to show people the basics. And then Funny Women also runs comedy crash courses online, which are great because you can do it all online. We record them as well. So if you miss a session, but that's for a week, do an hour a day. So that's what we do. And then there are lots of other brilliant courses that you can go and sign up for. In London, City Lit run courses, the Adult Education Centre in Covent Garden. They have a really good comedy course they run there. My best comedy friend and a really great comedy coach, Logan Murray. He runs brilliant comedy courses. Lots of people I know do his courses. They're in-person courses. We don't run an in-person course. So I send a lot of people to those. There's a lot of great comedy coaches out there running courses. Again, if you go back to the festivals, usually at every festival, someone will be running a comedy workshop or a course. So if you're going up to the Edinburgh Fringe and you think you'd like to have a go at comedy, just check the app for what's happening at the Fringe and look up workshops or courses. We have 2 years ago, we launched the Glitter Project, which is our very specific grassroots funded Arts Council England funded us for 6 months to run mentoring meetups and open mic sessions specifically for female identifying performers, writers, creators. And they're funded so they don't have to pay. So it was opening it up to a market where there are a lot of women in certain locations that couldn't afford to do things because there's always a price. Obviously, we charge for our stuff. So by getting the funding, we were able to launch the Glitter Project, which has been fantastic. Run out of money now. Waiting to see if we get another round of Arts Council funding, please. And then we do events to raise money for that. And that's been really hard work, but the reward of doing something grassroots like that, which doesn't have a price on it, so people can just come, is fantastic. But we actually are thinking now it is good and people should pay a little bit towards it. So that's probably how we'll continue with it. But that has been amazing. And quite an interesting story behind that, because one of our non-executive board members was diagnosed with a brain tumour back in 2004. Or was it 2003? 2003, actually. And she was going to go, she's a comedian, and she was going to go to Edinburgh that year. But obviously she was sick and couldn't go. And obviously was given effectively a death sentence. She was told at that time that her prognosis was 6 months to 2 years. She's still alive, actually. So she's got a very long, drawn out glioblastoma, which I don't understand a lot about, but she's still with us. But when she first got diagnosed, I wanted to do something that we could develop together, which was a legacy, so that there was something that lived on beyond her lifespan. And I'd come up with this idea of doing this mentoring project at the Edinburgh Fringe with some open mics. And she said, "Oh, that's brilliant. I love it. That's perfect." I said, "I don't know what to call it." And she has a Substack called A Bit of Glitter. So I said, "Well, why don't we call it the Glitter Project?" Because you have your Substack and everything. And that's how it began. So we created the whole Glitter Project sort of in Jo's image. And if you look at anything to do with the Glitter Project, our wonderful producer based in Europe, Roxy from Amsterdam, is a really fantastic graphic artist. And she's created all these images for the Glitter Project. And in pretty much all of them, Jo is in the pictures. So I found some pictures of Jo at our events, and we've just she's just taken her and put her in all the pictures, which is fantastic. So Jo is still, number one, she's still alive. Number two, she's with us at all these gigs. And we always put, when we put a slide up, if we're doing a Glitter Project event, Jo's always in the pictures. So she's kind of been with us ever since, really, she became ill. So it's a really great, because I feel like we've created it with her as well. And she did actually say to me, she said, "I think that I'm still here because of it, because it's just something for me to focus on and live for." So even though she'd never been to any of the gigs because she's bedbound now. Wow. So I feel very proud of that, actually. I mean, it wasn't totally my idea. It was something that we created as a community. But it'd be fantastic if we get another round of funding. It'd be really brilliant.
Yeah.
We wait and see.
Yeah, we shall find out. So we've covered getting your first gig. We've covered building your portfolio. We've covered upskilling yourself. Let's talk about confidence on stage. Now, you said that you are more of a behind the scenes person, but you've coached a lot of people that like to be front and center. And I think, like, as someone who is a front and center person, what I find is I still have my days. Like, I still have my days of, like, I don't really want to, like, be seen today. I feel tired. I don't feel good. And, like, off camera, we were talking about insecurities. So
we've all got them.
What advice do you have for people about, like, showing up and being front and center, whether that be on stage, on screen, in a meeting, whatever? How can you show up confident? How can you show up funny? And how can you show up brave? Like, feeling good about yourself.
Well, number one, I think you've just got to do it. I think we're all, most of us who, if we really sit and think about it, I overthink everything. And my brain just whirls around about all the things that could go wrong. You know, I haven't got anything to wear. I'm overweight. You know, my skin, I get very hot. My skin's bad. My hair looks rubbish. You know, we've all got a checklist, haven't we? But what great comedians get over it. They get beyond that. They just get up and they do it. So, you know, I think what I've learned from the world of comedy are two really important things. Is one is knowing your material. I mean, we're just sitting chatting here. I mean, this is stuff I talk about all the time. In a funny kind of way, it is my material. I'm not a comedian, but this is the stuff I talk about all the time. And, you know, there's probably stuff that you talk about all the time. But knowing your material and being confident that you know it is number one. Number two, really, I don't know if people... we're just in a very judgmental society, but do we really care what people look like, you know? So you just got to stop. I think preparation is quite important, but even if you just go away a couple of hours before your public speaking engagement or your first comedy gig and, you know, do what I do, I write everything down. A lot of comedians write stuff down. You know, they just have their habits. I know people that write their whole set out, which they've done 100 times before, in their notebook just before they go on stage, because the very act of writing it down helps them to remember it. So that's always a good tip. I had another one, but it's completely gone from my brain. What's the other one?
While you brainstorm on that, aside from the physical confidence, what about this whole idea of, like, what if no one laughs? Because that's like a risk with comedy, that, like, you might know your material, but you might not be the right person for that audience, or they might not understand. And that's scary. That's really...
But you've got to try it, haven't you? You know, unless you try it, you don't know. And you could do a gig one night in Glasgow where everyone laughs like a drain, and then that same material will not go down well in Plymouth, you know, in the West Country. If you're a good comedian as well, you do your research. You know, there will be things about your local community where you're gigging that you can easily look up. Now, that's the wonders of, you know, all the AI and the search engines now. You can pretty much find out fun facts about anywhere very quickly. You know, a little quick bit of research so you know what people in Glasgow like and get a laugh out of it. Don't just trot out the same old material with the names of towns where you live. You know, do your homework. It's about knowing your audience. That's that's the main tip, really. Know your audience. I get quite annoyed about people that, well, in comedy, a lot of people will do several gigs on one night. And what is frustrating about that is they'll run from one gig to another gig without seeing the other acts. And sometimes you get an overlap of material because they haven't seen what somebody else has done. So I quite like people to be in the room. I feel the same with business events and conferences. If you're not in the room, how do you know who your audience is. You know, if you're booked to speak at something, if you haven't got time to go and be at the whole day, at least talk to the organizer and find out who the people are going to be in the audience, what kind of demographic they are, what they do job-wise. You know, it's very easy to research. So knowing your audience is a really big thing. And you can't worry about whether, as a comedian, you can't worry about whether people are going to laugh or not. Quite a well-known female comedian actually said to me a long time ago, the main attribute for being a comedian is number one attribute is not to get embarrassed. Not to be, you cannot be embarrassed. You've got to let that go. And you've got to be very thick-skinned. Yeah. And I think that counts for everything. You know, being embarrassed about that awful moment, you think, oh, goodness, I shouldn't have said that. You can't be like that. Yeah. Fortunately, as you get older, it doesn't matter so much. So that's one good thing I can vouch for.
Yeah, and I think like a lot of famous business people, Stephen Bartlett said embarrassment is the cost of entry.
Oh, he would say it like that, wouldn't he? Yeah. But he's right.
Like sometimes you just have to do something and be cringe and be okay with it. And like the more you do it, the more fun you have. Like I think embracing that is so wonderful.
So no one laughs, you know. And the other thing you mustn't do as a comedian is don't punish your audience. I mean, I've seen people not get a laugh and then they've given the audience a really hard time because they haven't laughed, and that just makes them want to laugh even less. Yeah. You know, just take it on the chin and try something else out. You know, move on.
I think it also links to what I was saying earlier about confidence. Like if you find yourself funny, then the right people will find you funny as well.
You know, if you've got an idea running around your head that you think is funny and it makes you laugh, you know, try it out. Try it also. I mean, for many years spent on the road, traveling to and from gigs and shows. I don't do that so much now. With a car full of comedians, you know, because we'd all double up and drive each other and what have you. And some of the most fun times I've had is people trying out new material in a car or testing an idea, you know. And I can't remember where we were going. I think we were going to a festival or something, and I had Bridget Christie back in the day in the car with some other comedians, and she suddenly said, "Do I look like King Charles I?" She suddenly just came out with this, and we went, "Yeah, you do a bit, yeah." Next thing we know, she's got a whole skit in her show where she's this king, you know, she hired an outfit and what have you. It was absolutely hilarious. Wow. But that's where you test ideas at. Or you happen to say something and everyone laughs, and then you think, I've actually said it to comedians when they've said something, and that would be really good to put in your stand-up. And then it ends up in their stand-up. But the thing about pretty much, I suppose, the main point of all this in terms of comedy is that comedy is about real life as well. It is your story, and most comedians are on stage an enhanced version of themselves. Yeah. They're just bigger and louder and what have you. And mostly what you see on stage, when you meet them off stage, unless they're a character act and they dress up, they're pretty much a gentler version of that person you see on stage. Yeah. But then there are people that literally perform in character. So they find it more comfortable to be somebody else and not themselves. So they'll dress up for, and become somebody else to be on stage, which is also valid and brilliant.
Yeah. Thinking about like what you were saying about being loud and being like a more toned up version of yourself. I think a lot of women get shamed for being loud and bold and funny. I got shamed all the time because I was such a bossy child. I mean, this is why I'm reclaiming.
Bossy,
This is why I'm reclaiming. Yeah. But I was so bossy. I was so loud. I was a theatre kid. I loved performing. I would like make all these like random shows in my parents' house, and I'd make them sit down and endure and everything. And I internalized that like me taking up space is annoying, and I'm annoying. And that's something that I had to like rewrite after many, many, many years and start to show up in a way that's fun for me. And now it means that I get to do that as work, and I love it, and it feels like this big privilege. But
being your authentic self, I can tell you, as you get older, you become more annoying to people because my filters, just they're slowly dropping away, I just think, oh, I'm too long in the tooth to worry about this now. I'm just going to say it anyway. What the hell? And society isn't great with older people. Particularly, I think older women get a worse deal than men. My husband might argue with that, but actually, I know I can pretty much tell now when somebody talks to me in a condescending way, where they think first of all, they've got to have a guess at what your age is in their head. People judge you, and you probably get judged as well because you're an Asian. Asian women get judged. We all get judged for something. I get judged because I'm older. In my head, I'm just the same as I always was. But then I look in the mirror and I think, oh God, yes, I am older. But then every now and then you catch someone looking at you and then they say something to you and you think, they're treating me like I don't know what the F I'm talking about here. And actually, I know a lot about this. And then so I have a kind of, now have a bit of a default where I go, shall I take them on? Can I be bothered? Is it going to help me out? No, I can't be bothered. And I just walk away from it. But every now and then I'll just take the challenge on and think, I'm not going to stand for this.
Fair.
But I actually think that the benefit of being older is that I have that experience that I can pick up on that. Mm-hmm. As a young woman, I was very bossy and very annoying. Very annoying. And I think probably not always that nice, if I'm honest with you, because I was always telling everyone what to do. But I also have a much greater understanding of it now as an older woman because, like the rest of the world, I realise I have, in fact, somebody else realised I had a neurodiverse condition, which I kind of knew, but I just got on with it and thought, I'm too old to even worry about it now. I've had it all my life. But the more you go into it and the more you understand levels of neurodiversity, actually my daughter picked up on it partly, and also somebody I work with had recognised that I have a form of ADHD, like everybody else. But I didn't realise that it was so obvious. It was obvious to her because she works in that area. And what was great about that, and someone turning around to me and saying, look, we can do something to help you with this. And actually it was through her that I got some support to help me with my Arts Council applications.
Wow.
So it was a bonus, but it took somebody else to say that to me. And then after she said that to me, I then spoke to my daughter about it. And she said, well, yeah, of course you are, Mum. Yeah, so am I. We've worked it out. We have it all goes down the female line. We're all ADHD in different levels, but we all have similarities. And now that I understand it at my age, I've gone back down the history of my life and thought, that's why that happened to me. And that's why I have to struggle with that. I struggle really badly with formats and numbers and anything that has lots of bits and pieces to it. That's very common with people who have ADHD. They find it hard to organise themselves. And weirdly, I am quite organised, but I am very good at masking it and getting other people to do stuff for me. Hence the bossy.
Yeah. Because
obviously when I was younger, if I couldn't do something, I was clever enough to find a way around it by asking other people to do things.
That's all.
So that's a real bossy trick for you there.
I love that. And usually I ask, what does the bossy mean to you? How are you reclaiming it? But you've given us a perfect answer.
I think I've reclaimed it. I think I've reclaimed it all my life, actually. But I don't think we should be ashamed of being bossy. Bossy women get stuff done, and you've got to, not give any, are we allowed to say a swear word?
You can swear.
Yeah, not give any fucks and be bossy as hell, because that's how we'll get stuff done. And the more of us that do it as women, the more the rest of the world will get used to it,
Yeah.
And going back to what I said about culture reflecting society, we've got a lot more women MPs. We've got a lot more women predominant on the media.
Yeah.
We've, World of Comedy, where I am, lots of brilliant music artists and lots of amazing women, like big name women, you know, Beyonce, Adele. I mean, Cyndi Lauper, she's touring. You know, all these amazing women have always been there, but I can tell you, I bet they're all really bossy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to be bossy to get things done.
A woman to that.
Yeah.
Not even amen.
No, definitely no amen. A women.
A women. Thank you so much for your time. Because we wrapped up on the theme of bossy, do you have any parting words for anyone that's thinking of starting in comedy or is in the world of comedy and wants to be a funnier woman?
Well, obviously, look us up, funnywomen.com. I'm still a bit of a website girl. I know everyone's on WhatsApp groups and that these days, but I think, you know, websites are good and social media platforms, use them. That's a good start, but obviously follow your favourite people on social media, you know, support them, go and see them live. Live, we haven't talked about that, but live comedy, live anything is really important. It's not the same as sitting on a Zoom or a Teams watching people in little boxes. Please go, you know, it will die if you don't go out there and buy a ticket.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's all sorts of ticket prices these days, you know, and lots of gigs that are really cheap. Go, and if you live in a town or a city where you've got a comedy club, it's a really great place to start. So if you think you want to do it, my first bit of advice, go and watch it before you do it, because know what you're getting yourself into. You can't just grab a mic and get on stage. Have a little bit of a thought for it. Workshops are good, courses are good. I'm always happy to, you know, communicate with people. And I have a fantastic board of directors who support me. They're all brilliant as well. There's the Glitter Project. We get our funding again. Yes, that would be great. And also, can I just say as well, don't be frightened to use a bit of humour in your everyday life, because life is tough, you know. Yeah. And if you've got something fun to say to someone, say it.
Yeah.
Bloody say it. Don't just think it. Share it with people, and don't be fazed. Don't think that you can't say it, because we haven't talked about it at all, but women really are very funny.
Yeah.
We use our humour in our own circles of friends probably more than men do.
Yeah, I mean, humour is alchemy, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And, you know, women have it, it's innate with women, because how else do you look after a crying child? You tickle them or you make them laugh, you know. We do it all the time. Women laugh, we laugh with our friends because it's really important, because women have to stick together. Whereas I think men use humour in a very different way. Yeah. They don't use it in the same way for their community. They'll use it for one-upmanship and banter, and, you know, it's a very different experience. And that's why I think there are more men doing stand-up comedy than women. But I think that has changed, because now women are being seen in all sorts of, you know, fields that were always exclusively for men. We're seen in a different way. Like, you know, football's a great example. Look how brilliant female football teams have been.
Yeah. And
actually, when you see the women talking after matches and things, they're great. They're funny. They're great. So, you know, I think we need to just take a leaf from the men and say it like it is.
I love that. And I think that's why we need more diversity in all these different ways to see ourselves in art, in humour, in theatre, in music, across the board, regardless of your gender and like your life position, sexuality, neurodivergence. Like, this is why it's so important. So thank you for all the work that you do.
Thank you.
I will link all of your stuff below so people can find you if they want to work with you.
That's lovely. Thank you so much.
And thank you, because the world needs more funny women.
They certainly do. And we're working on it.
Yeah. And we're working on more bossy women as well.
More bossy, more funny.
I love that. Thank you.
Thank you.